Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 56th Chicago International Film Festival. My name is Anthony Kaufman. I'm a senior programmer here at the festival. We're excited to have the film Finding Yingying playing at this year's festival, a Illinois production. And we have the director of the film, Jenny Shi, a DP and producer, Shilin Sun, and producer Brent E. Huffman with us for our Q&A. If there are folks watching live, you can type in your questions in that text box, and we can get to them in the conversation. But let me just start out with a few questions to you, Jenny, and to the rest of the team. So it seems as if well, my question was really like wondering whether you had always set out to make a feature film, because it seems almost like you were exploring things at first. And I was curious about, when you went from I'm, meeting these people and meeting the family, I'm kind of exploring what's happening, to this is a story that needs to be a feature film that I need to tell and see all the way through.
Yeah, for me, basically, Ying's disappearance happened 3 years ago. It was the summer of 2017, and at that time, I was a journalism student at Northwestern University. So I had never made film before, and I didn't think about making a feature-length documentary. At first, when Ying first went missing, I saw the news of her disappearance through the college alumni group chat. So basically, at that time, a lot of us, we were just posting her information and try to find her. So at the very beginning, to be honest, nothing about a documentary. And I also learned that after Ying's parents arrived, a lot of local Chinese community residents and also Chinese international students, they were helping the family, delivering food, help with translation. And I also have a lot of friends in Champaign, or Urbana-Champaign area. So I went down and to see what I could do. And at that time, I reached out to the volunteer group. And that's where I met Shilin, who later became the co-producer and the cinematographer of the film. I was thinking at the time, I was like, what I could do. And I know I'm learning documentary journalism in Brent class, and I know how to use camera. And maybe I can start documenting something. Since there were a lot of journalists, they were doing reporting. And Shirley and I, we were just thinking maybe, it's just worth documenting what's going on right now. That's how we started. And that was actually before we met with the family. And even at that time, we didn't think about making a feature documentary. It was basically spending a lot of time with the family as volunteers. And also, we started to have the idea of how about documenting Ying's, the places Ying used to work and used to study. And we pitched the idea to the family. They thought that was a great idea because maybe they could bring back those kind of footage and to show their relatives, family members in China. So that's how we started. And if you really ask, what's the point? When was the actor, the point we thought about it's going to be a feature-length documentary? It was after the FBI arrested suspect. And the family spent 5 months in the U.S. in 2017. And we visited the family almost once a week. And a lot of time we were there without the camera filming. So, we also got to know a lot about who Ying was. And that was the time we actually started to thinking, maybe, it's going to be a long project. And we just started, we just kept filming and to see, what we could get at the end.
I wonder, and if any of the other team wants to jump in, I wonder, you mentioned there was other media there. Maybe there was other people interested in longer form news about what had happened. I'm wondering whether you felt like you were in a better place to tell this story than maybe some of the other people who were around.
Of course, because for me, it's a story. At first, it's a story about a Chinese international student who went missing, and also about her family traveling all the way from China to look for her. And you have to know a lot about the Chinese culture. Then you can really understand the family's situation. And even though there were media covered the story about from the family's perspective, but these were almost like the stereotype of victims. We saw mom like crying, and that's it. And we saw pictures of Yingying, and that's it. And for us, the goal of the film is really to get people to learn more about who Yingying was, and to learn more about how much her life has touched others. And for us, Shilin and I, we were born and raised in China and came here as international students. So we definitely had a lot of similar experiences that Yingying had when she first arrived in the U.S. And he's actually he can talk about that. Like, his wife is Chinese, and he actually immersed himself in Chinese culture. And our producer Diane Kwan, who's not here today, she's American-born Chinese. So all our teams actually have a very deep tie with Chinese culture. So we definitely feel like we are in a better position and the right people to tell the story.
Yeah, and initially, like Jenny said, the media reports were really sensational. They were really true crime, focused on just the graphic and kind of horrifying details. They were really focused on the killer. So sometimes the media reports wouldn't even mention Yingying's name. It was just this, Chinese student victim, like Jenny said, this victim stereotype. And yeah, it was so important to us to, humanize her, to really celebrate her story, and to really break those stereotypes.
Shilin, I was going to say, was there anything else you wanted to add about, your access?
Yeah, I think it's more about the perspective, because a lot of the American journalists, they can't spend that much time with the family, and just being able to experience how they navigate through the cultural and language barriers in the U.S. So we were there pretty much the whole process with them. So that's why in the film you can see was their emotional journey from first coming here and throughout the entire 2 years, and how their journey has evolved.
Yeah, that brings me to a question about, there's a true crime, documentary, right? And it's so popular on Netflix these days and streaming services, and it's almost a cliche. And I think I wonder if you were kind of playing with that form when in fact the film had become something very different. I'm wondering if you were aware of those sort of tropes, and maybe trying to stay away from those tropes, but maybe using them too. I find the film more about grief than it is about crime.
Yeah, I think this is actually one of the biggest challenge for us about how to tell the story. At the very beginning, we didn't know much about investigation. We didn't really know what's going to happen next. And we didn't have access to Ying's diary and other personal home videos and childhood photos. We didn't have those at all. The only thing we knew was that there's a family. They're looking for their daughter, and that's it. So at first we didn't have a clear idea about what the film is really gonna about and what kind of material we're gonna get eventually. So like true crime, I also watch true crime, to be honest, and I watched a lot. And at the very beginning, we thought, at least I thought, maybe it's gonna be like an investigation piece at an early stage. But later on, like Brent just mentioned, we really realized that there are so many stories, true crime stories, and really focus on the investigation, the crime, and somehow glorify the perpetrator. And that wasn't, you know, something we want to do with this film. And also, in 2018, I actually traveled back to China and spent a lot of time with the family. And I lived with them. Ying's parents, they were just so kind, and they treated me as their own child, basically. I got to know much about Yingying. I got to see her bedroom. I got to see like her notebooks and books on her bookshelf. So many things. And I also learned that, you know, she actually kept diaries even before she came to the US. And we know like that material exists. So I think it's in the late stage of post-production. We asked a family about the diary. And when we actually got access to the diary, I was just blown away by the beautiful handwritings and her thoughts and her dream, why she wanted to come to the US and how much she cared about people, you know, everyone around her, her family, her brother, parents, and Shilin, the boyfriend. And also she was thinking about, you know, having a baby, all things like that. And for me, that really touched me. And that kind of gave me a very clear vision of, you know, what the film eventually going to be. And I would say, like, to be honest, even in post-production, we have different cuts of the film. And we show it at Cartoon Films. We have 2 work in progress screenings. The first one was a rough cut. We actually had a lot of crime elements in the film because we thought, or maybe people are interested in true crime, even though we want to tell a story of Ying, but maybe, you know, that's something fascinating. So we put there, but we got feedback. You know, the audience was just feeling like, you know, they're watching 2 different films in like one feature-length film. And that really made us, you know, rethink what we want to do with all the crimes. And eventually we cut a lot, and we didn't even show any like forensic evidence, things like that. And we didn't even get into the crime scene. Even for the like recordings, we actually, you know, eventually like kept in the film. We wanted to highlight Yingying to show how hard she fought for her life during her last moments of her life. And we also want to keep basic facts of the crime, so the audience, at least, they could understand what actually happened. I would say, like, even in distribution, when at first we did have a hard time to, you know, find a distributor because people want to, you know, give a label to the film. They want to say that, oh, it's a true crime film, but it doesn't really look like a true crime film. And they had a hard time, you know, just to put it into a category. But for us, at the end of the day, it's a film about Yingying and about her beautiful life and about her, you know, basically the impact of her life.
Brent, Shilin, anything else to add on that? Were you part of that process, finding the right mix?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jenny did a great job describing it. I think, you know, we had to tell the details of the crime, or that you know, the audience couldn't follow the story, right? So it was kind of balancing what does the audience need to know without, like I said, the sensational, the kind of awful details of the story. I'm a huge fan of the Times of Harvey Milk. That's one of my favorite films, and I love how in that film they really bring Harvey Milk back to life. Like, you feel like he's a character in the film, that you know him, that you fall in love with him. And I really wanted that for this film too, that it feels like Yingying is with us, that the film is sort of her legacy in a way, her introduction to an audience. And like Jenny said, the diaries and Jenny's kind of wonderful read of the diaries were such a big part of trying to do that.
I wanted to ask about the diaries and how you incorporated them. The text on the screen, right? That was an aesthetic choice, a strong aesthetic choice. And then I'll bring in some questions for the audience. But I was curious about that, you know, the text.
Yes. So a big goal of the film is to keep being alive throughout the film. So before you really learn about the kidnapping, the crime, we want to make sure that audience get to know Yingying at the early stage. And, you know, in China, you know, that's a place we really get to know about the family relationship and also about her dream before she came to the US. And during the trial part, we still want to keep Yingying alive. So we try to, weave together the mom's testimony with her diaries about her goal, her plan in the U.S. And I think at the very early stage, we knew that we will have someone to read Yingying's diary. But we didn't really have a plan, maybe we're gonna hire an actress to read it. But since I'm like the director, I'm just using my voice and like temporary voiceover and to see how it works. But later on, I think we just had a hard time to figure out who's the best voice for Yingying. And also, because in the early stage, I wasn't in the film. I edited myself little by little in the post-production, and after having different work in progress screenings, the audience like strongly feel like maybe I should be part of the film. And I mean, from my perspective, like I was reluctant at the very beginning because I thought, documentary filmmakers shouldn't be in the film. But later on, I just feel like the similarities and the sort of like parallel between Ying and I could really make the story more relatable. And since I'm already becoming one of the sort of like character in the film, maybe having me reading Ying's diary could work. And maybe, I don't know, like audience will feel like they connect more with Yingying through my voice, through my reading. And in terms of like the graphics, I would really wanted to thank our amazing editor, John Fa brother, and the motion graphic designer, Jesse and Leah. So they really, they have they did an incredible job to weave everything together. And really to see, the texture of the diary, and also to see her handwriting. So yeah, and I'm so grateful that Ying's boyfriend and family eventually granted us the access to all these kind of diary. Yeah.
So I wanted to get to the audience questions, but I actually need to follow up on something there. Something fascinating happens in the film, and I really am very curious about how you feel as a journalist, as a sort of you're supposed to be a kind of person who's outside the story, but you become part of the story in ways that might be uncomfortable, like almost to the parents, right? There is a somewhat of a sense that you're become at certain points a stand-in, a replacement, not a replacement, but maybe like a temporary stand-in for their lost daughter. And I'm wondering how you dealt with that as the journalist here.
That was very difficult for me because I started to spending a lot of time with Ying's parents in 2017. Started saying that in 2017. Sometimes, like when I was there, Ying's mom would just suddenly said that, you really look like my daughter. I wish she was here. Things like that. And I didn't really know like what I could say at the moment. And I had a mixed feeling because sometimes when I visited the family, you could really see like Ying's mom, especially Ying's mom, she was really happy to see me being there. But then maybe, later, at some point she realized that, I'm not her daughter. I'm just someone, like following their story. And that probably reminded her that like she's daughter is gone forever. So it was really hard to me. But I still try to figure out, the right distance with the family. I want to get as close as I could, but I don't want to, basically cross the border into some place that they don't feel really comfortable. And until now, I don't even really know, what my role really is to them. I would say like I'm a filmmaker. I was a volunteer in the past 3 years, and maybe I can call myself a family friend, something like that. But the good thing is we are still keeping in touch with the family. We will once text the family once in a while and keep them updated, about the film, and also just to see what they've been doing recently.
And there were some questions actually in terms of updates. we have a sense of what the parents and boyfriend are doing now. How is the brother? That's one of the questions. And then any updates on the location of the body?
Yeah, so right now Ying's mom, she's still staying at home, and Ying's father, he's a truck driver. So he was a truck driver, but he didn't work in the past 2 years when he was dealing with the case. But right now he started to driving trucks again. And Ying's brother, he has a baby now. He has a family now. So hopefully that will be, something like the little baby could bring some joy to the entire family. And Ying's brother, he is working at a restaurant. So that's pretty much. And I did talk to Ying's father a couple of weeks ago about how they're doing. He still told me that, basically they couldn't fall asleep at night. And they would never, move on. And it's like, it's just something, it's a trauma they had to deal with the rest of their life. And they were glad that, we eventually made the film. And now, since, the trial ended last year, it seems, there's no news coverage on Ying's case and their story. But, seeing right now, like we have the film coming out this year, and they hope that this film can bring some attention to their story again. So that's good.
And so no updates, obviously, in terms of the body.
There's no updates so far.
Yeah. So someone asked an interesting question. Can you discuss the role of the death penalty play in your film, both structurally and ethically? Because there's a feeling that that the death penalty will bring justice, right? But then, of course, the death penalty is a complex question. Did you think about that?
Yes, and I think this is a really good question. For me, like this film, we are not really blaming, anyone or any system. We just try to show a full picture and a fair picture of different cultures in China and the U.S., although also to show different perspective and the facts about the criminal justice system in China and in the U.S., and really let the audience to understand what kind of difficulties the families they're going through. Of course, they didn't know, they knew nothing about the American justice system. So for them, death penalty is justice. But it doesn't work that way in the US for Americans, right? And that's something we really want to present in the film to show the cultural differences. And in terms of structurally, for the film, I would say like when I first started the film, like there are always like three questions in my mind. One is, what happened to Yingying, whether they would eventually find Yingying, and also like whether the perpetrator would get death penalty. So that's the question that audience might have when they are watching the film. And that's really leading up to the trial, because from the very beginning, we are talking about justice to Yingying, and also talking about the family, they want death penalty. And I think that's a good thing, like for the audience to really have in their mind and to see, what's going to happen in the third act of the film. And ethically, again, I think that's an interesting question and a really good question, because in the film, actually, I expressed my opinion on death penalty in third part. And when I showed the film to some other filmmakers, they did reminded me saying that maybe you shouldn't, you shouldn't have like made comments about death penalty, because maybe some audience they just don't support anyways, and that maybe they won't like the film. But for me, again, Ying and I mean Ying's parents, they're from China, and for me, I came here 4 years ago. So my understanding is really based on the Chinese culture and the Chinese criminal justice system. And that's what I feel like justice should be. So I just expressed that in the film. So that's my voice. You can have different voice, different from what I think. But I think at least that's a good discussion we could have.
Yeah, and really, really quick. I mean, kind of like like a John Borman film, there is a culture clash at the center of this movie, and the death penalty means very different things in in China, where hundreds of people are put to death, without trials and over crimes they're accused of. So I think there was this just different meaning of what the death penalty was and how it's sort of utilized.
I wanted to ask a question about the film and the time it was made versus the time it is coming out into the world. This is, I asked this actually to lots of filmmakers, and it's interesting because for some films, there's maybe not as much obvious difference. But of course, with your film, there's a lot of like extra layers here because of the world that we now live in and the rise of anti-Chinese sentiment in the U.S. So I'm wondering how maybe you're thinking about the film differently than you were when it was set to premiere at South by Southwest, back in March.
I would say like when we started making the film, we didn't really think about that the film gonna come out in a very different political climate. Right now, the tension between China and the U.S. is really, I don't know. I mean, I've never experienced such atmosphere that anti-Chinese and anti-China. And one of the goal of the film is really to break the stereotype of Chinese and international students, and to really show like who we are. And I feel like the film did a great job through Ying's personal story. And I hope, people don't see that. I think Brent, he had maybe better comments on that. But just like, we just don't see it as a Chinese story. It's not just Chinese. It's actually a universal, someone have dream and coming to the US, try to realize his or her dream. And, the feeling like the loss of a family member, that's also universal.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, we never imagined it, or I never imagined that the film would come out, where the president of the United States is saying these racist comments to vilify. I mean, like Jenny said, my wife is Chinese, my kids are half Chinese. This language that's vilifying all Asian Americans, really, anyone that's, I guess, not white and male, maybe, and that there would be threats against Asian American lives and attacks against them, because of this language. I could never imagine it. So I do think in some ways the film is maybe more important now than we ever imagined, because I think it does such a great job, celebrating Yingying, humanizing her, really humanizing her family. And I hope audiences see this not as a Chinese film, but as, the story of this incredible young woman, this brilliant young woman, this amazing family that would do anything to find her and to bring her home. And that they like Jenny said, that it breaks all kinds of stereotypes, the immigrant stereotype, the victim stereotype, the international student stereotype. It has the potential to do a lot more than we ever imagined.
Shilin, I see you nodding your head. I was just wondering if you had anything that you might want to add.
I think, Brent and Jenny summarized it really well. And I think Jenny did a really great job as of, making the film as personal as possible. Because only when the film gets personal that the audience is way easier to connect with the character. And, me and Jenny and I were both international students. And it's really rare for Chinese students to get our voice or our life be shown in the media in a personal way. So I think this film has really get the job done. Yeah.
It's funny. There's one more question, but before I get to that, the film is going to be on MTV, right? And it was acquired by MTV, which it's funny because MTV means something very different to me. But I I wonder if, you know, with MTV, like what kind of audience is going to be first engaging with it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think like even though I didn't have like too much information about that, but I think they are targeting young audience.
Yeah.
So really like college students, which actually like, you know, the same age around Yingying, and I feel like that's something relatable to them.
Yeah.
And also in this film, we're also learning how to deal with trauma and feeling the grief, and I think that's part of their goal. And if you look at the films they acquired this year, actually they have very similar themes about the trauma and about cultural things like that.
Yeah, yeah. So there was another question here. You know, at the end of the film, you know, we get one of the end credits about the counseling center not being held accountable. Did they respond to any inquiries regarding why there was inaction after the session with the killer?
So we did do an interview with university actually, but we ended up not using it in the film, and we did ask them about the counseling center, but the answer was no comments. So we didn't really have anything like more than what we include in the film. Basically, it's some updates about the civil lawsuit, things like that. Yeah.
There's another question, kind of following up on the question earlier I had about, you know, your role with the family. How were you able to manage to switch between the roles of a filmmaker and someone who provided comfort to Yingying's family?
Yeah. So for me, like, and also for Shilin, we try to do both. And sometimes it was really difficult, like for us, because, you know, as a filmmaker, documentary filmmaker, you were supposed to, you know, be a fly on the wall and documenting what's really going on at the moment. But there were a lot of moments, to be honest, I couldn't hold the camera because she was just basically crying. I didn't know what to do. And ethically, I feel like I should stop filming. So we had a lot of moments like that. And like at the early stage, I created a 30-minute student version, like a short sample, and show it to people. And there were like questions about, you know, whether I'm exploiting the family. What's the point filming those grieving moments? We had a lot of questions about that. And that's why we were very careful about our approach and the way we interact with the family. So basically, a lot of time we were not like filming when we were with the family, and whenever we started to film, we want to make sure that was the moment the family they were comfortable with that. But to be honest, you know, sometimes you can't really ask every time before you turn on the camera. So afterwards, we would try to have a conversation with them whether they were comfortable with what we did already. And there were, you know, I have to say there were miscommunications, and we also apologized to the family at some point because, you know, we thought in the past that was okay, and we thought, you know, it's still okay right now. But things changed day by day, and their emotions, their feelings also changed. So we try to be very careful. And actually, I saw some audience ask questions whether the family they were comfortable with us showing this. We show the film to the family before any public screenings, and that's a tradition of Cartoon films. Actually, we wanted to show the cut to all the participants before, you know, it's being shown publicly. And what we did was actually, ideally we try to show the film to the family in person, because we just didn't want to throw a link to them and let them to sit through this sad movie. But because of COVID, we can't really travel. So what we did was I asked two of my friends in China travel to Ying's hometown, brought the film to the family with their laptop. So the family watched the film there at their home with my friends, and Shilin and we Skyped in. So we were still sort of, you know, with the family virtually, seeing their reaction. And whenever they have questions, we can just answer them immediately. So that's how we did. And in terms of Xiaolin, we sent the cut even earlier to him because he can understand English. And he decided to watch it alone. And we respect his decision. So he watched it alone, and afterwards, I made a phone call with Shilin, and he talked about his feeling towards the film, and also he felt like there was something he still want to put in the film. And we actually took his suggestions and also family's suggestions into consideration. And right now, the final product you saw was actually approved by the family, and also we weigh in their opinions.
I think we're winding up here, but I feel like I have to ask, what did they say that you went back and added in?
Yeah, the line they wanted to, the thing they wanted to add is about the counseling center, and also the civil lawsuit. But for us, we really feel like the film should end on Yingying. We didn't want to, distract the audience to something else, even though that was also important. But we feel like, from a filmmaking perspective, we feel like that might work better as a text card, just as updates. And you can always go to our website to see. We also have a page of case updates, so you can always see what's going on next. And hopefully, normal. Actually, Ying's father, he still wanted to travel to the U.S. And maybe to meet the university or be part of any kind of impact campaign we are still planning to do. So we are totally open to that. And we are also hoping to, show the film in China, because that's also the family's hope. They want to, people to know like what exactly happened in the past 3 years, and really to get to know Yingying and celebrate her life, basically.
Yeah, I just occurs to me, I feel like I should ask about the girlfriend. We haven't mentioned her yet, and she's kind of a pivotal character in a way, and a kind of cathartic figure in a way. Will she be at all part of maybe our impact campaign or anything else involved in, getting the film out there?
We're totally open to that, although we haven't really
touched her.
Have a clear plan about impact campaign because of the COVID. It totally basically changed all our plan. And I know like today, actually, a lot of participants, including Tara, she might be watching the Q&A right now. And I just feel like, I really want to thank everyone who actually decided to be part of this film. When we were, applying for grants, a common feedback we got was really, if there's any hope in this film, because it's just really sad. And I think in the final product, we put Yingying into the film. That's the hope. That's the optimistic of the film. But other than that, I would say like the fact that so many people decided to help the family and also wanted to be part of the film is actually the hope, the humanity and warmth, in the film. And we also want to, carry that message and really attract more audience to watch the film. And again, I want to thank our amazing team. We were supposed to have like a physical celebration, but nothing happened so far. And I know a lot of them are watching our Q&A today. So we are so grateful, having you and, some crew members we never like even met like in person. So, so it's great. And I'm looking forward to, sometimes maybe we can celebrate in person in the near future.
That day will come, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Jenny, Brent, Shilin. Thank you very much for taking the time out to talk about the film. And everyone watching, tell your friends to watch the film. It'll be playing it throughout the week at the festival. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.